This is the Pharmaverse podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack, engaging leaders from the pharma universe. Hello and welcome back to the Pharmaverse podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack. And if you're a leader or an aspiring leader in the pharmaceutical industry, you're in the right place. Because we interview the brightest stars from all the corners of the pharma universe. And today's guest is unlike anyone else that we've had in the Pharmaverse before. We have Dr. Jill White, let me start over. I got it. I messed up one little piece.
It gets us, man.
Here we go. Hello and welcome back to the Pharmaverse podcast. I'm your host, Michael Pietrack. And if you're a leader or an aspiring leader in the pharmaceutical industry, you're in the right place. Because we interview the brightest stars from all corners of the pharma universe. And today's guest is unlike anyone else that we've ever had in the Pharmaverse. Today we have Dr. Jill White. She's a leadership presence expert from Image Interrupted at imageinterrupted.com. So she helps professionals refine their executive image, enhancing their credibility and their influence. She's a certified image consultant, she's a color analyst, and she's here to share her insights. Jill White, welcome to the Pharmaverse.
Hey, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you and also your audience.
I'm the one that's excited because we hear this phrase executive presence all the time, but it's subjective, it's vague. But by the end of this discussion, all of us are going to have a clear picture of what executive presence is. But before we dive into that, you have such an interesting background. I got to ask, how did someone who's worked for multiple Fortune 500 companies, serve as a military officer, all of a sudden start specializing in presence and image? You got to tell us that story.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems kind of random when you say it like that. But like you said, I started off actually as an officer in the military after graduating college. And at our boot camp or officer training, we had to pass an obstacle-based leadership project called Project X. And I hope that's not a secret, because if it is, it's just between us. But basically, they took us out to this huge barn. It's an open air barn, so there were no really exterior walls. But the barn was divided into, say, six rooms on each side. And it was basically, all the rooms varied, but it might be like a moat or a hole in a wall and some rope and some chains, right? And some gloves. But the objective was to lead your team through this obstacle to the other side, or whatever the objective was for that room. And you had to pass to get out of officer training. And so this exercise really taught me how to command authority and to stay composed under pressure, but even more how to communicate effectively in high stress environments, because of course we were timed. And that experience showed me really the difference between feeling confident in yourself and projecting confidence, which is, as you know, an invaluable skill in leadership. So later, when I transitioned into the pharmaceutical industry, like you said, working for multiple Fortune 500 companies, I saw those same skills at play, but they played out differently. You know, in corporate settings, it's more about nonverbal communication and personal branding, and the ability to present yourself effectively. Those can really make or break your success. So what I realized was that many talented professionals weren't really held back by their expertise, because of course there's a lot of that. It's pharma, it's plenty of expertise, but that inspired me to help them refine their appearance and their communication overall presence, because that's what I was noticing was holding them back. So after leaving pharma, I actually went on, as you mentioned, I got quadruple certified in all things image. And so now I coach professionals, especially in pharma, because that's what I know, on how to leverage their executive presence, their strategic style, even the science of color and skincare to enhance their credibility, to enhance their influence, and to boost their confidence. Because how you present yourself is a powerful tool. And I'm here really to help others reach their highest potential.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Because you're right. A lot of people are thrust into a leadership position because of their expertise and their skill, and executive presence is often an overlooked thing. It sounds like your approach combines science with leadership. How do these different elements all work together to shape someone, like how someone's perceived as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sure you know, your audience knows, leadership is more than just the ability to make decisions or to manage a team, right? It's how you show up, it's how you communicate, it's really even how others perceive you. So when you have science, you have leadership, and you have image, they intersect to shape that executive presence. So science tells us that perception is influenced by psychological factors like body language, even garment structure, color psychology, as we'll talk about. There are studies that actually show that color and garments can subconsciously enhance credibility and authority. Like, look at you and I both today. We have on nice high contrast, the white versus the black. That's actually psychologically is going to show authority. And if you think back to animals, you have orca whales, you have tigers, you have zebras that are all high contrast, right? They're dominant. So that's the science of it. Leadership, on the other hand, requires trust, requires influence, and strong nonverbal cues. So there we're looking for posture, we're looking for eye contact, we're looking for a good, firm handshake. Those help leaders to command attention. But image reinforces all of it by ensuring that the outward presentation aligns with the leadership roles, making a leader appear polished, intentional, and authoritative. But authoritative in a good way, right? Like an authoritative in a command respect kind of way. So when the three elements align, they create a leader who not only has the skills, but the presence to inspire, to gain trust, and to make an impact.
I'm sure we're going to talk more about this. As a recruiter, sometimes I'll have an executive go in for an interview and the feedback is, not enough executive presence. And it always baffles me. I'm like, what is executive presence? Did they have 20% and they needed 25? Like, it's so subjective. So can you kind of define what exactly executive presence is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. Let's dive into it. Executive presence is the ability to project confidence and authority and credibility, but in a way that inspires trust and influence. But there's a caveat that the boundaries are that you don't come across arrogant or cocky, right? Like there's a fine line there. So it's the it factor that makes people pay attention when you walk in the room before you even speak. Executive presence is really a secret sauce that no one hardly talks about, except for when you get feedback from companies, right? But research shows that it is 26% of what it takes to get a promotion. It's a key differentiator in high performers who stay behind the scenes and actually get that opportunity to lead. So I like to think of executive presence broken up into three main elements. So first we have the gravitas, or how you carry yourself, right? Do you exude confidence? Can you stay composed under pressure? And do you project credibility? And then we have communication. So how you speak, how you listen. Do you articulate ideas clearly? Can you engage others? That's a big one. And also, do you command attention? And then lastly, your appearance, how you present yourself. Does your professional image reinforce authority and your brand? So when you combine these three and when they align, you naturally command respect and influence.
And I got to think this varies per gender, right? I mean, what might work and apply to a man may not work and apply towards a woman. Are there any differences there as it comes to executive presence?
That's a very good question. And really, there's nothing specific that a man or a woman have to think of differently, because we are going to present it differently given if we're a man or a woman, right? Your firm handshake is going to come across differently than my firm handshake. But the actual details, the contrast, the walking with authority, the owning your space, the good posture, the good communication, those details are actually all the same. They're just going to show differently based on who they're coming from. And sometimes, honestly, women might have to work harder if they are born more with a soft voice, a little more soft spoken. They might have to work harder to get their vocal energy to match what they're wanting to project. But in the end, the package that we would consider executive presence will be the same.
I see. Okay, that's a good. And it sounds like someone can improve in executive presence, right? I mean, it's not something maybe the person's born with. So what things can people do to start improving their executive presence?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a learned skill. Like you said, most people assume you're either born with the it factor or you're not. But yeah, it is a skill, just like any leadership skill. You can have awareness, intentionality, and practice, and you can improve your executive presence. A few ways that somebody can start working on it. If they find themselves wanting to say, okay, well, I would like to improve my executive presence, what can I do? 3 things that we can start with really easily. Anyone can start with these today. First, watch your posture and your nonverbal communication. So we're going to stand tall. We're not going to slouch, right? We're going to maintain strong eye contact, and we're going to use purposeful gestures when we talk. Secondly, you want to refine your communication style. And this one really takes awareness. This one can be a lot harder, avoiding those filler words, hesitant language, I think, or I'm not sure, different things like that. And lastly, we've all heard this a million times, but I'm going to add it 1,000,001, that you want to dress for the role you want, not the role you have. Your attire definitely should signal authority and credibility. You know, we've talked some about colors and structure and polish, but they really do all play a subconscious role in how seriously people take you.
All right, so can we take a second and just evaluate me? So there are going to be some people that are not watching YouTube. I have a blue blazer on. I have a shirt that's white and pink checked. It's not too open.
Right.
Like, I wish there was a button right here, because I don't want to be like, you know, the fawns with, you know, but unbuttoned, but I don't want it buttoned up on my neck either. So
right.
Evaluate me. How am I doing?
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm glad you told me it was white with the pink checks, because all I can see on screen is a white shirt, right? It comes across as a white shirt. I can't really see the print as much. We were messaging, talking about what you would wear on the show, and I knew it would be a surprise. And I remember I said to you, well, if you want to be seen as trustworthy and credible, wear navy, right? If you want to be more approachable, then less contrast and maybe more earthy or muted tones. So I see you went with the higher contrast. And that's a lighter navy. So on the scale of navies, right, there's a continuum. You can have some navies that are a lot closer to black. And so that's like a nice medium navy, and you do have the white contrast. So definitely you have that authority with the contrast, because I can't see the checks. But in person, that would make it a little bit more approachable and a little more fun, since it's not just a crisp white shirt. And yeah, I agree. You have it buttoned well right there. You wouldn't want to go lower, but like you said, you don't want to feel stuffy, because all of those things make a difference, right? That would be the equivalent of someone like with their arms crossed, right? Closed off and stuffy. Yeah. So no, I think it's great. It's perfect.
Okay. Well, what about, this is a silly question, but I see a lot of men, particularly when they're wearing a suit, they also like have really fancy socks. Like, is that a thing? Like, give us some input on that.
Yeah, I knew when you started this question that's where you were going to go. And it's funny you say it, because we were actually out the other day and a man was walking by in a suit, and his socks were like, all you saw. My husband's like, oh, nice socks, right? Like, that's what he noticed. And I think they have a place. They have a time and a place. And in normal day-to-day business wear, I think it's completely fine. But if you are trying to lead the meeting and you want your team to have respect for you and your authority, then that's not the time to wear them.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. This episode is brought to you by K. Bassman International, the leader in pharma and biotech recruiting. When pharma executives need to make critical hires, they go to the experts at K. Bassman, pharma's one-source staffing solution. Visit kbic.com. Now back to the episode. Talk to us a little bit about color psychology. I know you've already started with that. Like, for instance, let's say you're going in and you're going to ask your boss, it's a review, you're going to go in and ask your boss for a raise. Is there something you can wear that would make that conversation go easier?
Yes. Okay. So there's a couple things we want to think about. The more contrast, the more authoritative you're going to come across. So maybe that's not the time that you want to have a high contrast, right? You want to be more approachable. You want it to be more of an easygoing situation. Yet, I still think navy is the right color as far as the jacket. So you could go with maybe a light blue shirt and the navy. So that's a little bit less of a contrast. But there's a reason why, say, PayPal, Chase Bank, right? Like, blue is this trustworthy, credible, calming color. And the reason why, there is actual science behind it, which I know your audience, you have a lot of people in pharma, they'll love the science of it. But blue as a wavelength is the shortest wavelength. So it's actually processed slowest by the brain, because of how our brain processes in the visual cortex next to the amygdala. The amygdala is our emotional part of the brain. So the brain like connects this slow processing with an emotion. And because it's slowly processed, your brain's thinking calmness, right? It's calm, it's slow, it's trustworthy. As opposed to red, which is on the other end, which is processed the fastest. And so that's why red is urgent and alert and all of those things. And so there really is a science behind the color and even the contrast I was talking about in nature. The high contrast animals are those dominant ones, are the predators. And so there's legitimate reasons why people say the things they do about clothing and business attire. I would be remiss if I didn't say I watch what people read, and I see a lot of people wanting to be more casual and wanting to applaud the leader who will be more casual. But there's an actual psychological science to something called introverted cognition. So everyone can look it up, but I'll tell you what it is. Basically, it's the psychological idea that how you dress not only affects how people perceive you, which is what we're talking about right now, but it also affects how you perceive yourself. So there's a reason why on casual Fridays, people get less work done because they're dressed more casually. And it's science. It's not something we can change by saying, oh, well, I'm going to dress casual, but I'll still work harder, or I'll just still work as hard as I would if I was dressed, more appropriately or more businesslike. We can't trick our brains, and so there is a thing. So I guess my point is, as much as I understand wanting to be comfortable and wanting things to be more casual, I think that's a bad direction for business to go. As much as you want to be, a great place to work and, just really a great boss, all those things are wonderful, but what we wear really does affect our output.
I'm really glad you said that, because that aligns with a lot of the things I tell my team as well. So I'll be playing this back for them.
They're going to be like, oh, why did he talk to her?
Well, give us some advice about how to create executive presence when it's like a virtual setting, because a lot of the interviews that my candidates go through are virtual in nature. A lot of teams are remote now. So how do these things apply in a virtual setting?
Yeah, actually, in virtual meetings, executive presence is even more critical because you don't have all those physical cues to work with. So to have a strong presence on camera, you'll have to work on a few things that we haven't talked about yet. So one of the things will be lighting and framing. So you want to have good lighting on yourself, whether that's an external light or just making sure you're in front of a window for a good natural light. And also that you are framed in the picture well. I actually had a comment. I was talking about virtual meetings not too long ago on LinkedIn, and I had a comment from someone. She said they were in a meeting and someone had their computer, down, and so it's kind of looking up at them, but behind them they could see a mirrored closet door that wasn't shut all the way and all the clutter inside. But because it was pointing back at a mirror, then you could see the ceiling fan like going, and it was so distracting. So you always want to think about your frame and what is behind you. Yours looks great. I am kind of an exception right now. As you know, I'm traveling around the US in an RV, so I have a limited amount of space that I can have as my background, but I still looked for the most kind of least distracting, I should say, background that I could. Another thing you want to consider, as I was mentioning, the height of a camera. Even if you have to put it on books or on a box, but you want to have your camera at eye level, maybe slightly above, and that's going to give the most natural eye contact. You never want to be looking up or looking down. That throws off the balance of authority one way or the other. And then you also want to consider your posture, right? This isn't a time to be all back and relax. This is a time to be focused, to be sitting up straight, square with the laptop or the computer. And then lastly, you really want to watch your vocal tone and your pacing. You want to speak with clarity and intention, because without the body language that they can really see, your voice really carries more weight in conveying your confidence.
Those are all great tips. And I really like the camera tip, because it's the same reason why, you see a bunch of friends out and they do the selfie and it's like they hold the camera way up. It's a more flattering angle. When it's down, I don't know if you've ever like turned on your phone and all of a sudden it's like the camera and it's that bad angle. You're like, oh my God, I got like 7 chins and you just look horrible, right? So the same thing with a Zoom interview or a virtual interview is that I tell people like a 5-degree higher than your eyes. So it's kind of like looking down on yourself there.
Yep, that's great.
Well, let's talk about the mistakes people make that actually weaken their executive presence. Let's talk about male and female mistakes that people make.
Okay, perfect. Again, like I said, it will go for both genders, but one may do one more than the other, right? So, a few common mistakes I see is, and I'll say these first two are probably maybe lean more towards women doing it, but like I mentioned, depending on the personality, a man can do it as well. But weak body language. So, like I was mentioning, slouching or avoiding eye contact, right? For introverts out there, maybe fidgeting or crossing your arms, shutting off. Those are mistakes you want to avoid as far as executive presence. Also, overusing filler words. Again, this can go male or female, but I do think I see a lot of women that might use the word like. Also, or I think can dilute confidence and reduce authority. Women, I think, are often, and I just did it. So did you see that? So you have to be very aware of your wording. And an exercise I actually have my clients do is to write down a list of common phrases that they speak, that they use, whether verbally or in email, and to read through them and to look for places that they can substitute a more confident type of language versus a weak language, such as, I just wanted to ask, right? Using that word just kind of weakens what you're saying. It's more, I wanted to ask, or does that make sense? And you say, I would like to hear your thoughts about that. Those kind of things. But I digress. One more mistake I wanted to mention here would be just dressing inconsistently with your role. And I do think this one might be more common for men because it is usually looking too casual. It can send a wrong message about your leadership identity. And even, I guess, just for a bonus one, would be vocal energy. Speaking too softly or with uncertain phrasing can make you blend in instead of standing out as the leader you're trying to project.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question about the mistakes because I've worked for some great female leaders, worked with and for and around, and some of them don't get the credibility they deserve. And I think a lot of it is because of how they dress. They almost dress either too revealing or overly stylish or something like it. Talk to me about some of the negative things specifically for women executives.
Good question. I think that as women, we have to remember in the workplace, we need to dress as a strategy tool. Your style is your strategy tool and not for fashion. You have plenty of time outside of the workplace to dress for fashion and to have fun. But I think that your experience, what you've seen, is definitely true and runs the gamut. We tend to gravitate towards fun things. And if you want to be a leader, if you want to be seen as leader, that's just not necessarily the time or place for it, right? Even this shirt, like this is as low of a collar. If I was trying to be business dress and presenting to my team, I wouldn't want to have a shirt lower than this. Really at the collarbone is where you want it. And definitely women need to keep in mind that style is a strategy. Everything we've talked about, from color to fit to tailoring, all of those things are a strategy that subconsciously people use to determine your credibility, your trustworthiness, if they want to listen to you as a leader or not.
That's good insight. Give the audience one thing to implement, just one small shift they can make today to improve their executive presence. Is there anything we haven't mentioned yet?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's anything we haven't mentioned yet that I would like to talk about, other than, I guess, the main thing I would recommend would be to let go of weak language. Let go of weak language. Have confidence in yourself, and if you have a thought, put it out there and be proud of it. Be courageous, stand out there and have that vocal. It's all about your communication, right? Have a voice, use it, don't speak too softly, and get rid of weak language. Do that exercise I mentioned. Write down the things you say and look for more confident ways to say what you're trying to say.
There's something that I think is weak language that I hear a lot of people saying. They'll say something like, "Can I ask you a question?" To me, that comes across as weak. Yes, you can ask a question. We're in a dialogue. The other thing I hear from a lot of people, candidates and colleagues, is the expression, "to be honest with you."
Right.
Hold
Like,
on,
are
we
you
weren't
not
honest
being
the whole
honest?
time. Now we're going to be honest. So I think the words we choose really add to that gravitas that you mentioned. More about executive presence. Are there misconceptions about executive presence? Like, do people overdo it to try to compensate? What are your thoughts there?
No, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is about personal branding that has to do with executive presence. People think that if they just don't care about it, that it doesn't matter. But that's not the case, right? You have a personal brand and you have or you don't have executive presence, whether you work on either of those or not. Like others are perceiving you no matter what you're doing to help them perceive you in the way that you want them to perceive you. So you might as well be proactive about it because they're going to have a perception about you, whether that be your personal brand and your personal brand relating to your executive presence.
I couldn't agree more. I wrote a blog about this for Biospace that like executives branding themselves. You have a brand.
Right.
Whether you're purposely trying to portray that or not, you have it.
Right.
So if you already have it, you might as well manipulate it to be what you want it to be. When it comes to executive presence, there's an executive, the person's a specialist in their area, but they are lacking a little bit of this executive presence. Can organizations like utilize your services, or how does that all work? How do they develop more executive presence with their teams?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that I do. I do corporate training and workshops, and I kind of work on all of the things that we've talked about because they're all important in executive presence. Having the gravitas, right? Like having the confidence, working on communication, both verbal and nonverbal, and that actually blends into your gravitas a bit too. It's all connected, and because as I mentioned, your appearance, you are changed. Your mental psyche is changed by the way you dress. So you're going to have more confidence if you dress more professionally, whether you think so or not. So organizations can invest in workshops, in trainings. If they have a leader that needs one-on-one coaching and leadership training, that is also helpful. But I find teams where the organization invests in executive presence training, even for their individual contributors, the teams are actually more productive. They take charge more, they show more initiative, so they actually get more things done just by having their own executive presence fed into, because it's really for everyone from individual contributor to middle management to C-suite. It's about showing your potential, and who doesn't want to have high potential.
Yeah, I mean, I got to think it's be really crucial for any customer facing person.
Exactly.
Salespeople, MSLs, that sort of thing. I mean, to come across as more credible, come across as more approachable, more likable, all those things are crucial.
Exactly, 100%. It's funny, I did a webinar not too long ago and threw up different pictures, right? Someone who had a nice white crisp shirt and someone who had on a white t-shirt. Like all the pictures were very similar. There were just subtle differences. The colors were the same. And 100% of people chose the better dressed person, always as the most credible, always as the most trustworthy, right? And always with the most authority. So presentation psychologically matters, subconsciously matters for sure.
Totally does. And we see it in commercials, right? If they're going to, rep up toothpaste and the dentist comes on and they're wearing their white coat, well, of course, that's going to add credibility, right?
Exactly.
Now, I did see that webinar. It was really well done.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sorry we can't show pictures here just because a lot of our audience isn't viewing it. But over the last year, I've been sporting a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow. I know one of your examples was that the person with the 5 o'clock shadow didn't have as much executive presence as the clean shaven person.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me more about that, because that affects me personally.
You take offense. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I do believe that either clean shaven or a purposeful beard is going to come across as having more presence. Okay, I don't want to roast you. We talked about roasting you live, but
I think everybody watching would love it.
they're like bonus points for Jill.
Yeah.
I think that if you went a little bit longer or more shaven, because especially on camera, when we're maybe right next to you, it's a little more obvious, but it does come across very 5 o'clock. Like very, I didn't shave yesterday or today, as opposed to this is a purposeful, right. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's a little darker. You have light coloring. And so if your beard was a little bit darker brown, it might be more obvious that this is a look I'm going for and it's clean shaven where I'm purposely shaving it. Yes.
I'll consider all that.
Okay.
I'll consider all that. And I'm not ending the episode on that because you just roasted me. But we are all out of time for the episode. But man, we have a much clearer picture of what executive presence is, how we can improve on it. Now, where can people find more information about your services, and how can someone follow you on social media?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. If they would like, if they are just an individual client, go to my website, imageinterrupted.com. I am really pretty active on LinkedIn, so find me on LinkedIn. I believe it's Dr. Jill White or Jill White PharmD. And also, if someone is in HR, is a trainer in pharma, would like more information on corporate services, they can just message me. I have a brochure that's not available on my website with corporate services.
You also have a really nice newsletter, right? How can someone follow that?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. I forgot. I'm about 5 or 6 editions in. The Polished Professional on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, great. Well, I speak for everyone in our audience. This was a very insightful episode. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Pharmaverse.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, that ends another episode. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe because we have many more leaders coming up with great content. You don't want to miss any of it. So see you next time on the Pharmaverse. Again, thanks for joining us on the Pharmaverse podcast. Make sure you subscribe below so you don't miss any leadership insights. Like and comment. I would love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next episode of Pharmaverse.